Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of No Names Review Crew. This is episode 45, and I'll be your host for today, Kevin Gossett, the LA Reviews editor. And today we have
Noah Nelson, publisher, podcast host, and I don't even know what even am I anymore.
all sorts of stuff. Who knows? It's going to be just a two-hander today with Noah and I. We're going to be talking some fringe stuff.
Hollywood
From the
Fringe.
Hollywood Fringe Fest. It's kicking off this week. Stuff's in previews, so just gonna have a quick chat there. And so, no, we both saw one show last night, and we're gonna save that one. So I'm gonna let you talk about the one you saw on your own.
Yeah, sure. Actually, even before we do that, I just want to note, Hollywood Fringe will run through the rest of this month. For those who don't know, who aren't in the LA area, which is a good number of you, every year, traditionally, right? What are years anymore? Every year, the Hollywood Fringe Festival pops up in June, traditionally. It is the largest fringe festival west of the Mississippi. If you don't know what a fringe festival is, I can't help you there. There's hundreds of shows that take place across the geographical region that is actual Hollywood. So the actual neighborhood in LA that is I think it's like a square mile plus zone, a little bit more. Dozens, scores even of theaters all throughout the area, and just everything from burlesque shows and lots of solo shows to musicals. Most things being about an hour, 30 minutes, an hour. A few things that'll go longer, a few full-length shows. It's always a grab bag. For the past, better part of the past, 5-6 years, there's been a pretty decent, some years even robust immersive presence with a good number of LA's immersive theater companies contributing stuff. And this year, a little bit different just because we're still coming out of the pandemic, and so there's fewer pieces that I think we would call immersive, and the category that immersive is in the Fringe is now the immersive and interactive games category. So there's game shows and stuff there as well. So you got to kind of pick your way through. It's also the kind of spot where you get a lot of people who are like throwing the I word around and then producing a show that's like, they break the fourth wall and that's all they do. And
It's so immersive.
Yeah.
When they break the fourth wall.
This year, among the shows we're tracking are Mother Nature, which is from Grayson Morris, who's comes from Asheville, North Carolina, but has been studying here for a few years. And we were tracking Grayson's stuff in the newsletter years ago out in Nashville because she was like the only person making anything remotely. So we'll find out about, like what's Grayson's riff on immersive. We'll find that out soon enough for ourselves. We're excited about that. Annie Lesser's got a show called Camp or something like that. Lots of A's. That's why I said it that way. Then there's Not Another Midsummer, which we'll be talking about. We tease that one. And then the one I caught this past weekend on first day of previews from Last Call Theater, Signals. Signals is it's a chamber LARP is what it is. This one is a riff on the SCP, Secure, Contain, Protect mythology that you find online. If you're not familiar with the SCP, I recommend type in SCP Foundation into your browser and get ready for a lovely amount of creepypasta / X-Files fanfic with the serial numbers filed off to make its way to you. It's a crowdsourced, collaborative storytelling experiment where each short story that people have contributed is framed as a report about a cursed object or a preternatural being.
That's the SCP or that's Signals?
That's the SCP, which Signals is based itself off of. So gotcha. Signals, they've created a show, a LARPy. It really feels, it's most like an MMO come to life. So Um, they took over 2 rooms at Thymele Arts in East Hollywood, and they have like 16 cast members.
Yeah, that was
Um,
what struck me. Was it's a very large cast for a fringe
huge
show.
cast, 16 cast members who are playing. The bulk of them are playing employees of the SCP Foundation, and then a handful of them, 4 of them, are playing the SCPs themselves, playing the monsters. And there were about, I want to say, close to 40 audience members,
Wow.
all of whom were kind of subdivided into different groups. So who you started with, who you got your orientation from, was based on the lanyard you were holding. The lanyard you were holding was based off a personality quiz that you did before the show, and then you got your orientation, and then you were just released on your own recognizance. At least the orientation I got, we were not given a clear objective. We were just told, now go out there and help the other people and like boss them around, because we were the admin group. But we weren't given real character objectives. So very much like an MMO, you're given your character class, you're given a playing field to play in, you're given the loose scenario, and then you just kind of went around and sort of physically clicked on things, looking for something to do. Um, there's a few things this has going right for it, which is choosing the SCP as a subject matter. I can't get enough SCP. Neither could the folks at Remedy, which is why the video game Control is basically the SCP with the numbers filed off. Like, it's
All right,
really
that
clearly inspired.
like that sounded familiar. I was like, okay,
Oh yeah, no, Control ripped off like
Control. Yeah,
Remedy fully. Like, and I think they're pretty open about it, right? It's like, oh yeah, we love this. Here we go. But that also, but that game is also a masterwork in tone. Like, so, oh god, I freaking love Control. I still haven't beaten all the DLC, but like, I need to do that. And
which you one of them, or you?
well,
I have altered, or I have AWE, I guess, which is the other one,
oh
the
yeah, yeah,
second one.
yeah, yeah. I did one of, I think I've done one, or most of the way through one. I forget how to play. It's not that I forget how to play. It's just like there's some specific things, like it's very intuitive. It's a great game. If you haven't played it, it's a great
A little weirdly hard game if you've taken some time away from it.
game. Yes, that is
You're
the thing.
asked
If you haven't taken
set
time
up.
away from it, it's easy. But if you go away for a while and then come back, it is really hard. Um, but one of the things about that game is the tone, and is the way it uses the world of the Federal Bureau of Control, which is the proprietary version of the SCP, to give you these sort of Lynchian, Cronenbergian, stark, just vibes, and has this off kilter sense of humor about it, and so really just a masterwork in tone. And this this can't do anything of that nature. Not that it needs to replicate the game, that isn't what they set out to do, but because they've got a MMO structure going on in a LARP format, it means that you wind up just kind of like at certain points queuing up behind other players, waiting for your turn. For folks who went to Arcane, uh, this is exactly the kind of experience you wind up having, right? Like, there's this character you need to talk to. There's 3 other people who need to talk to them. You got to wait your turn. You're standing around waiting your turn. And while you're waiting your turn, it's not a lot of fun waiting your turn. Um, Also,
So I guess
oh, good.
you mentioned that you bring up Arcane because Arcane, at least while you're waiting, it's like there's a lot to look at. Like the set was pretty magnificent. Is there anything kind of like that in this one, or is it just kind of
No, I mean,
the
like,
rooms at Family? Like,
it's a toss up at Thymele,
yeah,
like, there's a lot of production design going on here. They have to charge a lot more money if they did, and that's sort of not the point. I mean, to boil it down, and I don't want to flog this too hard, because as a first draft experience, as a fringe festival show, there is a fair amount to recommend it, in terms of there's some decent bones here, but there's too many characters, there's too many people this would have been a lot better if it was half the size and half the time, because
Mhm.
by packing in 16 characters and 40 participants, what you do is you create a traffic jam. I've been playing a lot of Mini Motor on my phone lately, which is this game where you connect, you make roadways to get people to work. And what you find is that the more elements are there, the more you get these traffic snarls. And that's the perfect metaphor for this. They've packed so many people and they've packed so many things in, and they haven't given them like they haven't given the players really juicy motivations, right? It's really a sort of choose your own path, like go find some fun. Like I wound up having fun because I just instantly just sort of dropped off the boat and was like, oh well, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, so I'm gonna go cause trouble. And I caused trouble and it was great. And that trouble did align with the objectives, right? Like I didn't try to upend the game, but I was just always making choices that led to hopefully more chaos within the confines of what I was given. And that's a lot of fun for me. And BSing with actors is always really fun for me. But it's a make my own fun type of fun. And I'm happy to have the sandbox, but it was crowded. It took a long time to get anything done. It didn't feel like 2 hours, luckily, because at least there was enough to do. But then you're in these kind of airless rooms at Thymele with like 40 people, and you
Mm.
and in another time and age it'd be like, okay, sure. In this time and age it's like, uh I'll swab myself tomorrow. And it's like, you just like, I don't know. So if you've got a lot of COVID anxiety, definitely not for you. If making your own fun isn't what you look for in immersive, not for you. And if the whole SCP thing doesn't ring your bell, then not for you. But if you've got a high tolerance for things being loosey goosey, and you like make your own fun type sandboxy immersive experiences, um, you know, a normal year, a non-COVID year, I'd be like, oh, go get a ticket. This year, I'm a little like, I'd love to see them tighten this up. I think it'd be a lot better of an experience at half the size.
Cool. And I mean that's pretty typical of Fringe too, I think, right? They
Yeah.
just kind of it's a mixed bag, and like even shows themselves can be a mixed bag throughout in the middle. Like some words are fun, some words are like, it's fine.
Oh yeah.
Um, a show I think we thought was more than fine though
Oh yeah.
was Not Another Midsummer from
The Queen's
The
Fools.
Queen's Fools.
Yeah, everything you just said about Fringe almost like doesn't apply to this show. Fringe a little loosey goosey, doesn't quite know what it wants to be. Like the acting kind of can be hit and miss. It's just like all and reverse.
Yeah.
Then
we got this one. And I think, I mean, this one comes from the pedigree is strong in the LA theater scene. It's a lot of people from JFI shows, from just people you recognize from any immersive thing you've probably seen here in the last few years. It was great. So I guess we should back up and explain it. So the premise of the show and why it's lightly immersive is it's this theater troupe they're trying to put on Midsummer Night's Dream in Hollywood, and half of their cast has gotten lost. They have no set, and there's some dysfunction in the troupe as they try to get this on. So it starts in a bar, and that's kind of like the main immersive part, where it's you kind of get to hear from the actors and talk to them, and they'll drag you around and kind of involve you in their drama and schemes. And it was fun. So it seemed like when it started off, it was a little too chaotic. It was like, is this gonna work? And then as the cast slowly kind of moved people off that main branch, it really kind of was like, oh, this is working. I think you and I commented to that effect as it was going on.
Oh yeah.
It was like you could feel it picking up and doing what they wanted to do.
Yeah, you enter in through the side door of the three clubs, a well trod Hollywood Fringe venue, and the venue that had been home to JFI for the last 6 months, and you're told, yeah, our cast isn't here yet, so just go get a drink. And then they load everybody in, and there was a lot of people. Like this was like a sold out preview at Fringe, which is kind of unheard of. But then again, relatively big cast and a lot of folks, a lot of friends, and you're pretty popular group of kids. And it was definitely a theater crowd. Like people were already warmed up when they walked in. And this is kind of great for Fringe in that way, in that a Fringe crowd is generally pretty warmed up. Although they're playing on Wednesdays, so they're not going to be able to, benefit from people having fringed all day and then come through this show and like be all in a warmed up, position. So they're kind of in a weird schedule for the festival. But yeah, the troupe kind of came in with like a burst of energy, sort of announcing themselves and letting us all know that like, things were already going wrong. And then they went about and like sort of kind of started preparing like right in front of us. And there were actors recruiting people and auditioning them to fill in some roles for this production of Midsummer, because they had, they'd lost their Theseus and they had lost their Snug and they had lost their fairies who are, stuck in Yermo. And the raw chaos of it at first was just like mildly amusing, but then as time went on, you did get a sense of who these people were with each other, and then slightly through osmosis, and then through a more a robust form, they got us to go into the main space. A lot of folks, and myself included, help like set up the chairs to create the stage space. Like there wasn't even a stage, right? Like there was nothing when we came in.
It's like a theater in the round.
Yeah.
Version of this too. You mentioned how kind of they pull people into the theater. I thought that was a really kind of elegant way that you didn't realize it was happening either. Because I got pulled off for like a scene with one character, and then he like after that he just kind of dumped me back into the theater where I'd been in the bar before. It was like, oh, okay. And everybody was like full, and I was one of the last people to like kind of join up after the sequence I had. So it was really like, there's some smart decisions even in that early stage. It was like, oh, this they do know what they're doing here. Huh.
Yeah. And one of the things that's really great about this piece is, so they've chosen to do Midsummer, and anyone who's going to a Fringe, anyone who's going to Fringe knows Midsummer is at least vaguely familiar with the basics of the show. And because of that, they could just skimp on doing the play within the play. Like they could half-ass it if they want to, but they don't. Like there were times when I was watching this, and granted, it's a cut down version. I think the whole show, it's billed at 90 minutes, but I think the show went a little closer to 2 hours. Which that could wind up biting them in the ass. / the fact that they're on Wednesdays may be good for them, because they run a little long on a day that Fringe isn't packed. They're going to be okay, but on a packed day, it could throw the whole schedule off. Fringe is a delicate beast, but they did not skimp on doing the Midsummer part of the show. And they had these multiple layers going on. So like everyone's playing parts in the show, but also everyone's playing, one of the performers in the troupe. And there are little asides and like little offstage things that are going on while things are happening on stage. And if you're letting yourself be hyper aware of your surroundings, you're going to be able to pick up on stuff going in sort of the meta story. And then the meta story does feed into the play itself and back around. And some of the actors are like, they're drawing out really broad comedic characters, but like distinctly broad comedic characters on these different layers. And it all just fires together in a way that is super satisfying. Like I went in the show kind of low energy, and I came out really revved up because of just how well it worked, how well they were articulating the story of Midsummer Night's Dream, and so many of the clever choices, and the way that the meta layer of it commented on the play, also managed to sort of just create joy in of itself, but also a little bit of poignancy if you're a big theater nerd and like theater about theater, which again makes this a perfect show for a venue like the Hollywood Fringe.
And yeah, because I was vaguely familiar with Midsummer Night's Dream as a show, but I've never actually seen it perform. So it was too this kind of like the first time I'd seen it. It was like, this is an interesting way. So I wasn't it would like pick up on some of the nuances of kind of like the doubling and things that you're talking about, but you could see how it was like the further it got into A Midsummer Night's Dream, the more I could see it kind of like some of the drama that had played out before with the troupe was factoring into the characters and the way they were trying to tell that story. So I think, like you mentioned, the meta elements there are really like carefully written into like kind of how they did this, and it's not anything like super complicated, but it works really well, and the actors are are really good, I would say,
Yeah.
at what they're doing. Because there's an element of like, because they're like a amateur theater troupe, there's a level of like quote unquote bad acting among them too, which I think is relatively hard to do, I would guess, from an actor's perspective, and they pull it off really well. And the dialogue and the updates to like the play, that feels like they've tried to modernize it. It feels jokey, but it also works in service of kind of everything they're doing. And it was like, oh, this is yeah, it's like this is great. And the more it kind of went on, I was like, okay, this is fun. Like, even when we got to the intermission, where it kind of takes a break to go back to the troupe and the more immersive elements. It was like, oh, I want to see the end of the show at this point.
Yeah. They something happens and like they force an intermission, and I was like, yeah, but I was really into this Midsummer. Like, don't stop now. Um, and to be clear for everybody, the show isn't immersive in the. This is not a JFI show. This is not Theater Macabre. You're not constantly going off on little side missions. You're not going through a bunch of tracks. The heart of it is this show within a show production of A Midsummer Night's Dream. Like, the bulk of what you're watching is this production of Midsummer Night's Dream. This good, fun production of A Midsummer Night's Dream. And it's the wrapper layers. And there's some participatory theater stuff. Like, a couple of people are tagged to come in and be Snug the Joiner,
Yeah,
and someone
for a few people, it's incredibly immersive.
yeah, for a few people, like, I mean, to the degree where it's like the thing that people fear about immersive is like, are you gonna like drag me on stage and make me do something? Yeah, people get dragged on stage to do things in this one, but they spend a fair amount. Like, part of what's going on in the beginning section in the prologue, where the more traditional immersive stuff, traditional immersive, whatever that means, is happening. Are they're feeling out who might be good for that, right? Like, they're making sure that they can find the people who are gonna excel in those roles, and they're doing it while they're laying down some seeds. Like, there's a little moment that happens in the prologue that is just this exchange between two characters, which 90% of the people are going to miss, that completely pays off at the very end of the show. And I was so delighted by that the show rewards you for paying attention to the little exchanges between the characters when they're in free roam mode, that it pays off, to use a gaming term, in the cutscenes, is really great. And I'm curious as to how much of that is very careful planning and how much of that is the troupe discovering and the troupe just being super familiar with what works in an immersive scenario because of how much experience these performers have in doing this exact kind of work.
Yeah, and I think it probably is a combination of all of those things. Because yeah, some of the stuff I saw was not like I saw kind of some of the vague scenes in the bar, and then like as people kind of passed me by, I wasn't trying to like move around or free roam to like get a lot of stuff, because it was Monday night, it'd been a long day at work. It was just kind of like,
And it was packed. It'd be hard to move around anyway. So
it was yeah. And then so yeah, kind of near the end, like one character pulled me off and like gave me like a full rundown of a bunch of stuff that paid off kind of before that intermission scene, and then through the end of the show. Some of the stuff I saw, so it feels like they've definitely threaded these things in to make sure people have the information to kind of pick up on what's going to be happening. And I think the one maybe kind of like thing I have is, if you don't follow some of the characters off of the intermission, you stay in the theater, I think you miss some of the like tying up of those storylines. They bring it all together, but it's like if you miss it, you kind of, it's like something clearly happened between a bunch of these characters off like in the bar area, and I just stayed at the theater area. So I think felt like I missed a little something there, but I mean that's pretty small quibble with the show.
Yeah. I mean, I like you stayed inside the theater in large part because like it was a full house and I was like, I don't feel like going back out there. And you know, the characters definitely seem to have advanced down their arc, but it didn't get to me. Like I didn't, you know, like,
and that's what I'm saying.
yeah.
A pretty small because they pay it off and like they kind of catch you up. But it definitely feels like some beats. Like it's like okay, but I don't know. That happens in immersive shows. It's like if you don't follow a character, you are on a different track. You got to kind of pick up on it, and the show does a good a job at like bringing that back in when all the characters come back into the play.
Yeah. Also, it was a 5-minute intermission, and I was like, well, you know, when it's that short, it's like, you know, not going to run there. The show. Any other notes on the show or?
I mean, it was a lot of fun. If you're in LA, like I don't go check this one out. It definitely seems like not just a strong Fringe show, but a strong show in general.
Yeah. I mean, I've been doing for the better part of 10 years, I've been going to Hollywood Fringe, and this is one of the strongest shows I've seen. And I've seen a lot of strong shows, like, you know, for old Fringe heads, you know, like the kind of shows that, you know, Michael Fisher and Ali Miller have both created separately and together, like both before they were a couple and after they've been a couple. The kind of stuff that Four Clowns was doing way back in the day, the kind of work Capital W's, you know, done, Lost Moon Radio, all of the not the DNA of those shows, but like that bar, that Fringe bar of like, oh wow, this could be like this. What's this doing at a Fringe festival, right? Like, which is like the backhanded compliment of Fringe. That this show has,
it's remarkably polished for like a Fringe show, right?
Seriously, I think that's the thing that shocked me the most was that this is super polished. Like if they tell me, I'm gonna talk to the team later tonight. Actually, they'll be on the main podcast this week. If they tell me they rehearsed for just 6 weeks, I'm going to start screaming during the thing. Like, which, you know, look, entirely possible, right? Most theater gets about 4 to 6 weeks of rehearsal time. I think a lot of it comes down to these actors. This is functionally a troupe already. Like these actors have worked with each other so many times before that they've got a lot of shorthand. And they can get themselves, you know, into space. And there's a whole level where by having the meta layer of like we're playing actors playing roles, by having the characters have, you know, a layer of relationships outside of the play that then also informs what the characters in the play are doing. It adds a lot, but it is something that could be really clunky in the hands of a group of people who aren't as comfortable playing with each other. And this troupe is definitely comfortable playing with each other.
And a kind of added bonus, I think, for LA folks is these are some regulars in the creep shows. I think the Willows, a bunch of these people have been in, and to get them. See them playing something so different was a nice treat because it's like they're always like playing like an unhinged type character, like someone who's like real spooky, and it's like they're getting to do their own thing here, and it was fun to see these like regulars doing something a little different.
Oh yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, like they're super. Like there's folks in this who I've only ever seen be like silent, creepy clown man, you know, and stuff like that, or like like vicious frat boy, you know, who dies in an automobile accident. And here they're playing a radically different kind of character, and I'm like, oh wow.
Because I think you commented at the beginning too. It was like, oh, I didn't recognize her because it's like she's playing like a normal person.
Yeah. There's people here. It's like, oh, like, is that, you know, and it is, and yeah, that was super articulate. Thank you for dealing with that one. I don't want to give certain things away, like, and also it won't make sense to people who haven't gone to see a bunch of those shows, but like, you know, if you like the people are playing outside, people are playing against the type they have often been cast as, but they also have full access to the to those typing abilities. So it's it's just a lot of fun. And also I think that if you don't have that foreknowledge going in, it's still just a lot of fun. They're good actors just chewing up the scenery. They're playing with us, they're playing with you, and their goal is to create joy for the audience, and they do that. And uh, it's just a blast. It's a blast.
And I think because and I mean we've been talking about this too, and it works on multiple levels. Because I think even if you don't want to engage with any of the immersive stuff, the version of Midsummer Night's Dream they put on is fun to watch, even if you're not familiar with the show. Like it was.
If all you want to do is like hide and you're like, oh no, they're acting at me, you can duck out and keep your head down and watch the show, and it's still just a blast. Um, there's there are 3 dates remaining on this, and it plays twice on those
2, yeah.
days. So the 15th, 22nd, and the 29th, 6:30 and 9 p.m. shows, which if hopefully they'll tighten themselves up a little bit, or they're going to be exhausted because they'll only have a half hour between. And yeah, it's $20, so definitely worth a Wednesday night.
Yeah, you like 2 hours of theater for $20. So
Yeah,
not a bad deal.
2 hours of good theater for $20.
Yeah,
not a bad deal at all.
All right, so I think we might hit a few more Fringe things here if we can. Maybe we'll have another update in a week or two. But I think that probably covers it for the Fringe previews that we checked out.
Yeah.
So
Before we let everyone go, I just want to point out we're doing office hours in the Discord this Monday the 13th at 4 p.m. It's going to happen over in the cafe section. There is an event in the Discord set up for that. The event's called Office Hours, What You Up To? This is a great opportunity for folks to just connect with each other, swing on by, find out what everyone has been up to, what you've been seeing, what you're working on. A great time if people want to pick any of our brains, or at least pick my brain. I'm guaranteed to go. So far, I see 2 people interested. I'm trying to dig out who's interested in so many clicks. And so, yeah, it'll be a good run. Come on by.
all right, and that's it for today. So as always, thank you for listening. No Proscenium is a labor of love. Everyone on staff who create podcasts like this and read on the site are volunteers. You can support this work by donating to the No Proscenium Patreon. Even $2 or $5 a month helps. And if you're enjoying Review Crew or the main NoPro podcast, you can also support us by leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Thanks. Have a good one.